Well, we are here in the Advent season, the first Sunday of Advent, and Kristen shared with us a little bit about the significance of this season, but I wanted to just talk briefly about it because I really love Advent. It's such a rich time with the symbolism of this season. We participated in a little bit of the tradition today through the lighting of the candle. Christians have been celebrating and observing Advent for hundreds of years. It's a season of anticipation, of preparation, and of expectation. You see that there are 4 outer candles. The number 4 is significant in Advent. Advent always begins 4 Sundays before Christmas. We light an additional candle each Sunday, and these candles represent the time of waiting. There were 4,000 years that passed between the time that the first prophecy was given, that Jesus would arrive, and the time of his birth. And so we remember the time of waiting. 4,000 years, that's a long time. And so we have this season to remember and reflect and prepare ourselves, not only for the coming celebration of Christmas, which we're definitely looking forward to. That's so important to remember the coming of Jesus. But in another sense, we're also awaiting his second return, his second coming. And so we're preparing our hearts for that as well. I just think this season is so rich with symbolism, and so it's appropriate that we're kicking off our Advent teaching series titled Hope is Here. Hope is here. And when we talk about having hope in Jesus, I think that phrase, hope in Jesus, means different things to different people. And so before we dive into Matthew today a little bit, I want to talk just briefly about hope in Jesus and that phrase. For some people, I think, hope in Jesus is kind of like a high school yearbook. Now, my wife is in this yearbook, circa 1984. So I won't put that up on the screen. But a high school yearbook is one of those great things that we keep and hang on to because it's very important to us. We pull it out from time to time when we're moving and we're going through stuff that's been stashed in the closet, and we flip through the pages. We reminisce. It brings back hopefully good feelings and memories and things that happened. It's always good to see who was voted most likely to succeed and whether it actually came true, right? But then the yearbook goes back on the shelf. We store it away. It doesn't really make too much difference in our lives. We don't get rid of it because you wouldn't want to do that, but it just kind of sits out here. Sometimes when we say we have hope in Jesus, I think it's a little bit like that. Yeah, I know he's coming back, and I'm glad because he's going to rescue me from this world, and that's a good thing, and we're just going to set that on the shelf, and we don't know when he's coming, so we're hoping and waiting. But it's kind of out here. For others, perhaps hope in Jesus is more like a good cup of coffee. Now, I love a good cup of coffee. When I get up in the morning, this is the first place that I stumble to in my house, is the coffee machine. How many people are with me? Coffee, yes, very good. This is what gets me going in the morning. This is the fuel that starts my day. And for some of you, real addicts, your whole day is kind of oriented around your next cup of coffee and how you're going to get through the day. This fuels us. It drives our day. For some people, hope in Jesus is like that. When we get up, we realize we are living with a purpose. We are living for a reason, and it drives us. It changes who we are and the decisions we make throughout the day. Yearbook hope and coffee cup hope. I want to talk today about coffee cup kind of hope. And we're going to go to the book of Matthew. You can turn in your Bibles or on your phones to Matthew 24, 36 through 44. The kids did a great job of acting that out for us, the passage that we're going to look at today. While you're finding Matthew 24, let me just say that I was working on this sermon most of the time while we were in Illinois, celebrating Thanksgiving with my wife's family. And being a lifelong Cubs fan, I couldn't help but sense the significance of preparing to launch a sermon series titled Hope is Here in the year that the Cubs have won the World Series. Now, I know that the World Series was a few weeks ago, and John probably already made some comments about it, but this is my stage today, and John isn't even really a Cubs fan, and so I'm going to revel for just a minute in the Cubs' victory, okay? For those of you who have not rooted for the Cubs all your life, you do not understand what this event was like. I grew up watching the Cubs. My wife grew up watching the Cubs. We are raising our children to be Cubs fans. And that night of Game 7, as we moved into the 9th inning, if you could have been a fly on the wall of our living room, it would have been a sight to behold. By the 9th inning, we are sitting on the edge of our sofa, rocking back and forth, okay? Willing them on, waiting for this victory that we have so long hoped for. And then when we go into extra innings, we are on our feet, all four of us. Jesse was in bed. We didn't keep him up. All four of us are pacing. We are walking. It is tension. I mean, it is palpable in the room because we have spent hours of our life rooting for this team. Hours that maybe are about to be redeemed, finally. We need a reason that we have rooted for the lovable losers for so long. And when Chris Bryant fields that ground ball and makes the throw to Anthony Rizzo at first base, secures the final out, secures the win, secures the World Series title, our living room erupts in pandemonium. I don't know what time of night it was, 11:30, midnight, it was late. We didn't care if Jesse woke up. We were screaming, we were yelling, we were jumping around, we were doing really bad sports chest bumps that we were trying to do. It was crazy. We were celebrating because we had hoped for so long to be able to experience this moment, the Cubs finally winning the World Series. As exciting as that was, and as much as we had hoped for their win, that kind of hope is totally different from when we talk about hope in Jesus. When we hoped for the Cubs to win, it was a yearning, it was a dream, it was a strong desire, hoping that this thing would happen. But when we talk about hope in Jesus, we are talking about something much different. We are talking, and this is the definition I'm going to use today, a life-altering confidence rooted in the promises of God. A life-altering confidence rooted in the promises of God. We don't just wish and hope that Jesus will come back. We know he's coming back. We have a promise that he is, and it changes our life. It changes the way that we live. It's coffee cup hope. It drives who we are. Let's read Matthew. I'm going to read it again, even though the kids did a great job for us this morning. Matthew 24, 36 through 44. But about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken, and the other left. 2 men will be grinding with a hand mill, one will be taken, and the other left. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. So here it is, 2 days before Jesus would be arrested and eventually crucified. He's sitting on the Mount of Olives with his disciples. And it's interesting to me that in these last moments that he has with them, these last days, he's not talking to them about how they can deal with the grief that they're going to feel at his crucifixion. He's not coaching them through that. Now, it's going to be really awful, guys, and this is how it's going to happen, and I want you to be okay. He's not doing that. He's not explaining to them how the resurrection is going to happen. He's promised that it's going to happen, but he's not going through the science of that. This is how it's going to be, and when people ask you afterwards, and this is what you need to say to them, and how you can explain that it really, he's not doing that. Instead, he's saying to them, focus on my return. Get ready for my return. He's planting hope into the hearts of his disciples. And here we are, 2,000 years later now, still waiting for Jesus' return. We don't know when it will happen. So how do we keep hope alive? How do we keep coffee cup hope in our life? Take hold of that life-altering confidence rooted in the promises of God. We can start, I think, by understanding what Jesus tells us in this passage about what that time will be like. What will be the circumstances surrounding his return? He takes us back to the days of Noah. You probably remember the story of Noah, the guy who was told by God to build the big ark, to rescue and take with him samples of the animals so that he could start over afresh because he just wanted to wipe everything out. The evil in the world was so great, he wanted to start over and wipe it out. That's the first thing we know about Noah's time, is the days were evil. Genesis 6:5 says to us that the wickedness on the earth had become so great, every inclination of the thoughts of man's heart was only evil all the time. Every inclination, only evil all the time. That's pretty bad. Second thing we know about the days of Noah is that people were consumed with the activity and the routine of daily life. Verse 38 tells us they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came. In other words, they were wrapped up in their life, in the dailiness of life, doing the things that they needed to do to get through. Sin had so completely permeated and crippled their life and creation that they were so wrapped up within themselves and their life, they were oblivious to Noah and the warnings that he was giving them about the impending flood. Completely tuned out what Noah had to say to them. My mother-in-law is a wonderful lady, okay, time out. Preachers in the room. Am I breaking any kind of protocol if I tell a mother-in-law story? Is that? Okay, we'll see. No? Okay, very good. If so, I'll learn the hard way, I guess. But she really is a wonderful lady, my mother-in-law. Her name is Suzanne, and she's a reader. She loves to read, as do I. And when she reads a book, she just gets into the story. And if she has any extended amount of time to read, she is wrapped up in what is happening in the plot, in these characters, where are they going to go, how are they feeling, what are they doing, and she is completely engrossed in this book, and everything else in the room, everything else in her world falls away while she is wrapped up in that story. Her daughter, Amy, my wife's sister, when she was about 3 years old, needed to talk to her mother, to Suzanne, while she was reading a book. So she says, Mommy, Suzanne, hey, lady. Finally, Suzanne comes to and realizes that her daughter is talking to her. She's so wrapped up in this book that she's tuned everything out, even her own daughter. This is, I think, our default setting as humans that are sinful people. Our default is set to earthly, to temporal, to worried about ourselves, to being overly consumed with our own good, with our own needs, with self-preservation, and if we're not careful, we completely tune out God's voice in our lives. How many times have we come to the end of a busy day, and you know how it goes. You're rushing around to get the kids off to school in the morning. You got to get to work yourself. You got to do all the things that your job requires. You got to get back home. You got to pick up the kids. You got to take them to practice. You try to eat in there. You've got to do all these things. You've got to volunteer at church, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have to tell you, you know. And you get to the end of the day, and you realize an awareness of the presence of God or an openness to the Holy Spirit speaking to me was even on my radar screen today. This is what life can do to us. And when the Son of Man comes, this is how it will be, full of evil and people completely consumed with themselves. That's just a pretty depressing picture. And that's where hope comes in. That's where we need this life-altering confidence rooted in the promises of God. Jesus doesn't just warn the disciples that times are going to be bad. He also gives them a clear course of action for living hopefully, for having coffee cup hope until the day that he returns. He says two things: keep watch, verse 42, and be ready, verse 44. Keep watch and be ready. And just to make sure that you don't still have a little bit of turkey tryptophan in your system, say those two phrases with me. Keep watch and be ready. That's what he tells us to do. How do we do that? Doesn't mean we go out on our front porch and sit and wait. Of course not. What does that practically mean for our lives to keep watch and be ready? I think there are two things that we can do that I'd like to talk to you about today. The first is to take action. When we talk about keeping watch and being ready, this is not a passive thing. We need to take action. Sometimes we see the world around us, we see the evil, we see it on our news feeds, we're aware of it, and we just want to go into self-preservation mode. Okay, if I can just wait it out until Jesus comes back, I'll be okay. But look at what Jesus says in verse 43. Understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch. He would not have let his house be broken into. So we also must be ready. The master takes action. He was prepared for the thief's arrival. He didn't hide in the closet with a flashlight, hoping if he was quiet, the thief would go away. He took action. Remember that hope is life-altering. That's our definition for today. It changes us. It drives us to action. I love what Paul says in the first letter to the Thessalonian church in chapter 5. Now, brothers, about times and dates we do not need to write you, for you know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. You are not in darkness so that this day should surprise you like a thief. But since we belong to the day, let us be self-controlled, putting on faith and love as a breastplate, and the hope of salvation as a helmet. He compares faith, hope, and love to pieces of armor, to a breastplate and a helmet. Well, who needs armor? People who are doing battle. People who are in the action. If we're going to keep watch and be ready, we don't hunker down and batten the hatches and hope all the mess in the world blows over. We take action. We go into the world and we go into the mess. That's what Coffee Cup Hope does. It takes us into the mess. It drives us to action. I have to say, I am so excited about the things that are on the horizon for our congregation when it comes to getting into the world and getting into the mess and taking action. We've sent those shoe boxes. It was so great to see those go out. And we're preparing Christmas baskets. We're going to bless folks in our community with things that they desperately need at this time of year. And a few weeks ago, we had an outreach brainstorming meeting. There were about 20 of us there that gathered from the congregation. And we sat around and brainstormed. Just thought of any idea we could think of. What can we do to reach into this community? And present with us that night was Eric Key. Eric Key is the pastor at our Garfield Park location that I talked to you about a minute ago, where we're going to go after our Christmas Eve service. And he began to share about that community and the needs there and the challenges that they face and the dreams that he has and the people there have to see that area of our city transformed. And I have to say, those of you that were there remember this, I'm sure. There was just a sense in the room that the Spirit was speaking to us and saying, this is an opportunity. This is a place you need to get into action, and you need to go, and you need to put your hope, your life-altering confidence in the promises of God, put it into action. In 2 weeks, we are taking a group of people down to Garfield Park on a sort of exploratory mission, we'll say. We're going down there. We're going to get a tour of the community and see where our Garfield Park congregation is. Pastor Eric is going to talk to us about this area. And then we're going to go and we're going to listen to the Spirit. And we're going to say, what is he telling us to do here? We have all kinds of ideas, from after-school tutoring programs to help with families who have family members who are incarcerated. I could go on and on and on. But I believe that we're going to see some amazing things happen in that community because we're going to put our faith and our hope in action. The best way to get out of that tendency to become absorbed with our own life is to start caring and reaching out to someone else's. So we're going to go down, and some of you probably be a part of that team, to see what we can do to put our hope in action in Garfield Park. Taking action is the first thing we can do to keep watch and be ready. The second thing is to walk obediently. To walk obediently. If we say that our hope is life-altering, altering meaning change, then we have to evaluate the way that we're living. It means we live every day like it matters for eternity. We get our priorities straight. We stop spinning our wheels, chasing after things that are not going to matter for eternity. We stop worrying about the things that won't make a bit of difference when the Son of Man returns. We start doing the things that feed our soul. We stop doing the things that hurt our soul. We stay. We run away from sin. We walk obediently. 1 John 2:28 says, "And now, dear children, continue in him, so that when he appears, we may be confident and unashamed before him at his coming." My sophomore year of high school was a defining moment in my life. And when I read this verse that talks about being confident and unashamed before Jesus when he returns, I think back to this moment my sophomore year when I faced a decision that was huge in my life, whether I would obey or whether I would not obey. Now, you need to know something about me. I'm a big nerd. It's true. If you know me, yeah, I know. Thank you, Bo. But it's true. I am, and I love geography. I love atlases. Like Suzanne gets absorbed in a novel, I could get absorbed in an atlas. I don't understand it either. But I just love this stuff. And I had a dream that started in middle school to someday paint a floor-to-ceiling, wall-to-wall world map on the wall of my bedroom. I know. It's exciting stuff, all right? But I wanted to do it so bad. And my sophomore year of high school was the first time that I had a room to myself. I have a younger brother, and we'd always shared a bedroom up until that year. And I finally had a room of my own. And I said to my parents, can I please paint this world map on my wall? Sure, you can paint your world map at long last. So I picked out the perfect ocean blue, and I painted one whole wall of my bedroom ocean blue. And then, this was a little while ago, so we're back in the age of overhead projectors. I traced the transparency of a world map and got an overhead projector and got it positioned on my wall so it took up as much space as possible, wall to wall, ceiling to about the top of my bed. And I began to trace the world map onto my wall. It took me a couple days just to trace the outline of the continents. And then, for some ridiculous reason I can't remember, I didn't choose a map that had the country borders on it, so I freehanded all of the country borders in the world. That was several more weeks of trying trying to get all of that right. But I loved it. I was eating it up. This was my dream come true, to finally have a map on my wall. And then when I got all of the tracing and the outlining of the countries done, I had to choose colors, because you know that in a map, you can't have two countries touching that are the same color, because then you can't distinguish the two. So you have to have a color scheme. So I had to choose my colors, and I had to decide which country was going to be each color so that it all looked right, because it had to be good. It was permanent. It was going to be on my wall, right? So I chose my colors. I remember the United States was yellow, and China was green, and Saudi Arabia was white. Anyway, you get the idea. So I spent so many Saturday mornings, more than I should have maybe, I don't know. I got up, and that's what I did first thing. Got out my paints. I had like a paint station in my bedroom, and I painted countries. And then I had to label countries, right? So I got a stencil set, and I started in on the labeling of the countries. And I had 3 or 4 countries labeled. There's 190-some, 200 independent countries in the world. While I just started the stenciling process, my parents call a family meeting. Hate those. They call a family meeting, and they said, "We're moving." God has called us to plant a church in a different part of the city. There's a brand new community with 500 homes being built. People are starting to move in, and we feel like God's saying, "I want you to start a church in Via Mari," was the name of the community. I was furious. I was livid. I was bitter. I was angry. I was a nasty person for weeks. I was told at the dinner table, just don't talk, Matthew. Because I had nothing happy, nothing good to say. I could not believe that they knew how much I wanted this. I was almost done, and we were going to move. I couldn't peel it off the wall. Didn't they understand this? And on top of that, it was going to be incomplete. My OCD, how was this? I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I was mad. I was really, really angry. And it may sound crazy to you because you probably didn't have a dream of painting a world map on your wall. But I did. And it was very important to me. I was reading my Bible one day, and God said, take up your cross, follow me. Leave your map behind, follow me. Did not want to do it. Not that I had a choice. I didn't get veto power over the decision. I was going to go, but was I going to go and be nasty about it, or was I going to go and be okay with it? And I, by the grace of God, truly his work in my life, and that moment in time, I went to my parents and I said, all right, we'll go. I'll leave my map. We'll go, and I'll be good with it. I can let it go. I can paint a new map, maybe. I don't know if I'll have a room of my own, but I'll let the map go. And I have to tell you, it wasn't about the map. Because when we moved to that community, and my parents began to work there, and God began to build his church, I experienced church in a way that I had never experienced it before. It wasn't about the map. It was about God wanting to show me that he has the power to radically transform lives, which we saw over and over and over. That the church is a body of people who loves and supports and cares and reaches into the world, which that body of believers did in a way I had never seen in my life. When he asked me to walk obediently and to give that up, he knew how much I needed to have that experience. It shaped my understanding of who we all are here, shaped my understanding of the ministry. It taught me about God's power, so many things that he knew I needed in my life. If we're going to keep watch and be ready, then we have to walk obediently, even when that's really, really hard. But hope will see us through. That life-altering confidence rooted in the promises of God.
We just want to thank you for watching the sermon online. If God is working in your heart, we would love to hear about it. You can go online, www.encountertrinity.com/nextstepscard. You can fill out information there. Let us know what God is doing in your heart. If you need help with anything, we would love to help. Counseling, we would love to do anything that we can to help you go to that next level spiritually. When you fill this out, it goes to one of our pastors. It is private, and we will take care of that information to the best of our ability. We love you, we care about you, and we want to see God do great things in your life. Have a great day.